Hi.
Hi. Hey, everybody. This is Megan,
This is Steven.
and this is the Synchrony podcast where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. And I'm very excited about today.
Today is a good episode.
Yeah, because you know why?
Statistics.
Yes, because Megan is a big old nerd when it comes to
Yep.
number crunching and making graphs. But before we get into that, I wanted to bring up a couple of things, kind of like housekeeping things. So number one, let's talk about the launch. If you've been following the project for any period of time, you're probably like, what do you mean launch? You've already been matchmaking. Yeah, that's true. We started matchmaking people last summer, and we've been working on our approach since then. We've been doing it 100% for free. So all of our dates so far, no one's paid to be involved in Synchrony because we really weren't sure when we first started it if it was going to work and if people were going to resonate with it. So,
Well, and we wanted to build a database too to make it easier to match people.
yeah, we wanted to get people in and make it easy to kind of get people involved so that we could test out the approach. So now we feel like we have tested out the approach and that we're still learning new things every day, but we feel like we have a pretty good system down and that it's working. And so now we are prepping to make this more sustainable in the long term. Because right now we're matchmaking in the small hours between getting off of our day jobs and putting our kids to sleep and on the weekends.
Yeah, we're both working 40 hours a week at our normal jobs, and Megan is putting about anywhere between 12 to 20 extra hours a week into Synchrony after hours.
20 might be generous.
No, a couple weeks you've done closer to 20.
A couple of weeks have been pretty busy lately, which has been really fun.
Yeah, when you have to make up like dates that have to get rescheduled or something like that.
Yeah, so it's been exciting, but we want this to be something that we can offer for the long term and that everyone can get exposed to and take advantage of. So we are going to be putting a pricing structure in place, but we're not just going to start charging people for what we're doing now. We're going to add, hopefully, a lot of other value streams that people can take advantage of too. So not just our matchmaking services, but also things like creating communities where people can interact with other singles, doing some seminars and meetups. We have so many plans, some courses.
I'm excited for the courses.
So excited about the courses because we'll talk about this probably today or in another episode, but like there's so much for us to learn in our culture, so much that we need to really unpack and reshape about how we think about dating and relationships. So anyway, all that to say is those features are coming really soon. We're going to be launching on April 1st. And by that, we mean that we're going to reopen our survey pipeline. We haven't been accepting new surveys for a while now.
Well, really since the beginning of January.
Yeah, it was very soon after New Year's when we closed the pipeline.
You were booked until March.
Yeah, we were.
So we're like, oh gosh, we need to figure out something.
Yeah, we had to pump the brakes so that we could create room for us to get all this stuff together. So we are going to be reopening our survey pipeline and accepting new bookings again. We will have a pricing structure in place. So there is a way to get involved early, and it would be really, really wise if you haven't already been involved in the Synchrony project, if you haven't had a consultation or been matched yet, you will want to pre-register.
Yep. You know why?
Why?
Because you'll save $100.
You'll save $100. That's a big deal. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to give you some early access to some materials too. So all of that detail TBD, but if you go to synchronyproject.com right now, you can click on the link to pre-register. It's just going to ask for your name and email, and it will ask you to validate your email to make sure that it's you. So
Make sure you do that.
Yeah, please go through that process and pre-register because we're never going to have it as discounted again. It's never going to be as discounted as it will be for the pre-launch. So take advantage of it. Anything else about the launch that we should say?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. Do you want to talk about the questions email?
Yes. So we are going forward with the podcast. We have content that we already have in the pipeline that we want to put out, but we also would love to have interaction with our listeners. So we have an email that will be in the description of this podcast that you guys can send in questions. And we would love to hear them.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool. The email, by the way, is questions@synchronyproject.com, just in case you want an easy way to remember it without having to go look at the show notes. But if you want to send a voice memo, you can send a voice memo. If you'd like to send an email.
And if you do send a voice memo, I think it'd be really cool. I've heard this on other podcasts. And you wouldn't mind us sharing the voice memo on the podcast. We can upload it and put it on there with only your permission. We will not do it otherwise.
Yeah. So anyway, that'll just be a neat way for us to kind of engage with you guys. So take a look at that email if you have questions about apostolic dating or topics that you want us to talk about. We'd love to hear from you.
Please do.
Okay. Are we ready?
I think so.
I'm excited.
All right. Let's get into the juicy stuff.
Yeah.
Like statistics.
Statistics. Data.
There should be a jingle.
Yeah. If you didn't listen to our previous podcast, you might not know why I am such a nerd. My background is in religious studies research, and I love me some surveys and survey data. I just think it's so interesting.
Where did this data come from?
Yeah, so this is coming from the folks that have been involved in the beta testing for the Synchrony project. So the people who reached out and took our survey and went through our pipeline. We're going to talk about the survey respondents and also the folks who went a step further and booked consultations with me and did deep dive interviews before being matched. So we have taken a look at all of that data and just want to share with you some of the big takeaways and impressions. I want to start off by saying first, though, that, we're going to talk about the themes and insights from this survey of around 300 people in these interviews. What we're talking about, the themes that we identify, aren't necessarily representative of the entire community of apostolic singles.
Yeah, this is not saying, we're not saying that this is the whole movement's opinions or viewpoints.
Right. Or it's not even a representative survey, right? Because these are people who volunteered. These are the pioneers that were willing to try out the Synchrony approach first. They're the early adopters. So if this were supposed to be like a scientific study of some kind, we would have tried to go control where people came from and try to get a representative sample of our community.
Well, and control biases too. Like making sure that we have a good controlled group and making sure people are unbiased.
Right. So this isn't necessarily scientific from that perspective.
It's still going to be very interesting information.
Yeah. And it's going to be really cool just to think about, of the people who were willing to try the matchmaking approach first, what's that community about and who are they? And hopefully it'll give us some more insight into just our larger apostolic singles community and people who might be out there looking for someone, what they can expect from the folks who are involved in Synchrony.
All right. So who are the 300 singles that we're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, first I should say we're probably going to put 300 singles on the podcast title. It's actually 278. 278 singles, but that doesn't
300
sound
looks better.
Yeah, 278 doesn't sound as pretty. 278 people, though, who took this survey. It probably took them like 20 or 30 minutes to go through the whole survey. It's pretty long. We'll start with the survey responses first, I guess. And they are a really diverse group of people. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, a ton of diversity.
Yeah. We saw people respond to the survey from 40 different states in the U.S., which
that blows my mind.
I know. I hadn't actually crunched the numbers on that until yesterday because I hadn't been watching to see how many different states were there. 40 states.
The last time we checked, we were at like 18 or 20.
Yeah. So if you feel like there is not a single in your area that fits what you need, like, or who would be interested in this, there's probably one in the neighboring state because chances are somebody in the regions close to you has gotten involved in the Synchrony project, which is really cool. And we also had a few other countries represented as well. So we had a couple of respondents from Canada, a respondent from Jamaica, a respondent from the Philippines, which is awesome to see. So some international matching possibilities happening there. But yeah, we were just really excited. Let's break down really quick which states had the most Synchrony respondents, because I think this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So the top state is Florida. which is not super unexpected because we live in Florida and a lot of our early adopters were people who knew us or
Yeah, word of mouth.
yeah, people who knew of us or who could recommend, a single that they knew. So Florida was top, but then the rest of this to me, like I was looking at these and cracking up thinking about if you're part of the UPCI and you've ever been to North American Youth Congress and they put up like the state roll call, you always know which states are going to be the most obnoxiously loud about being there. And this list looks like that list of states. So top was Florida with 14 respondents, then Texas with 12 respondents. Indiana and Louisiana both had 11 respondents each. And then tied for fourth, Arkansas and Missouri with 9 respondents each. So lots of other states and regions represented as well. But those were the top 4, which I thought was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And so these are of the 278?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is from the 278 respondents who submitted surveys.
All right. Now, let's go ahead and talk about men versus women.
Yeah. So this is always like a sticking point. We had way more women respond than men.
Yeah.
And I think we could spend a whole podcast episode talking about why.
Which we will.
Yeah, we'll do that in the future. We can talk about why that's the case. I'll just put it out there first that I do not believe it is because there are many, many, many more single women than there are single men.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
I think that there are other factors at work, both social media algorithms and also cultural factors like, men being willing to try something like this or feeling comfortable trying something like this. But so of those 278 people, only 53 of them were men and 225 of them were women.
Yeah.
So that's a ratio of 4.25 women per man who responded to the survey.
Your odds are good.
The odds are good, gentlemen. Yeah, I commend the gentlemen who have come into the pipeline and tried this because I do think that they're really, there's some barriers for them. Like I do think that it's difficult for a guy to admit that this is something that he could. I mean,
from a guy's perspective, it's like I can see why using some sort of service to help you find someone could be perceived as like you're not able to provide, right? You're not you're not being able to drag home the mammoth and feed your family kind of thing. It's like you need help with some of the things that societally has been told like that you should figure this out on your own. Yeah. So asking for help is saying like, I am not doing what I should be doing.
Right. Yeah, I think you're nailing it. Like, I think we put pressure on men to be the one to initiate relationships.
Yeah.
And, we actually asked, when we first started this, we asked some of our single male friends what their thoughts were on the model. And they gave us some really direct feedback.
Direct feedback, but also very consistent feedback.
Yeah. And they're like, this is emasculating.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate them just saying that, they let us know, like, look, as a man, I would be embarrassed to do something like this because I'm supposed to be the one to go, find my wife.
Yeah. And to caveat that, we asked people in different age groups too. Yeah. So it wasn't just all like a bunch of 20-year-olds. We were asking a couple, mid-20s and mid-30s and early 40s.
Yeah. But all that to be said, I mean, the men who have come into the pipeline and who have gone through the process, I just have to give them such huge kudos because they are really aware of their own needs and priorities in their relationships. And they show up with an attitude of like, hey, if I'm looking to build a Christian family, I might as well pull out all the stops. And I love that. I mean, I think that's the mindset that we need more of. So, but speaking of age, you actually created a nice little caveat there.
Segue.
Let's talk about age. So there was a pretty good spread across age groups. We definitely saw the majority of people showing up in their mid to late 20s to mid 30s.
Yeah, I think our demographics are like looking more in mid 30s.
Yeah, like I didn't actually calculate like the mean or median age.
You did a couple months. You did like a month or two ago, and it was like 37.
Well, no, it's hard to track because in the survey itself, I ask for age ranges. So I don't have a specific number. I ask later when we get into the actual consultation, but I ask them to give me an age range because that makes it easy for me to just look at people in sort of big chunks and categories as I'm matching. But so
so Megan's going to break down the different age ranges between the men and women.
Yeah, let's start with women first. So the youngest age range starts at 21. 21 is our lowest limit that we'll accept new submissions for. So if you're under the age of 21, we're going to wait to matchmake you. But so in the range between 21 and 29, so anyone in their 20s, that was around 22% of the women who responded were in that group. And then about 23% were in the next group up. So the 30 to 35 chunk, which is a smaller number of years.
Yeah.
And a larger demographic. So that's a pretty big chunk of folks. So between the ages 21 to 35, we're looking at like 45%, almost half of the women who responded were under the age of 35 or 35 or younger, I guess I should say. So that's pretty significant. I think a lot of that has to do with where our outreach started. Like we really started pushing this out on Instagram, and Instagram caters to that age demographic more so than Facebook. So I think we saw an early response from women in that age group. But we also saw some really good involvement from women in higher age demographics. So between the ages of 36 to 40, so kind of like that late 30s segment, there were about 18% of women in that demographic. A really big chunk in the 41 to 55 age bracket.
Yeah, that actually surprised me. We have 28% there.
Right, and that's a larger number of years again. So these
it's a 14 age.
Yeah, these segments aren't necessarily equal in size. I have them broken apart that way because it kind of connotes a certain stage of life.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're depending on where you are in your 30s, you might be thinking as a woman very differently about things like your fertility.
Yeah.
And what you want in terms of children.
Yeah.
Which age groups you're willing to sort of date in. You get into your 40s and the landscape changes a little bit. And so in the 41 to 55 age group, we had 28% of women who responded fell into that category.
Yeah.
And then around 9% of women in the 56 and older age group, which is a massive spread. I mean, I think we had people in their 70s who were responding as well as people
which
who
I think is amazing.
Incredible.
Honestly, when we first started when we were starting to pitch the idea of Synchrony, we were running into like, well, is this going to be like, are we going to have one big age group? And when we started getting respondents from people 60 and older, I was like, this is fantastic because
I'm thrilled.
And like, this is not me being mean. I'm just saying like, that it's harder to date in that age range.
Because people assume that you've stopped looking.
Yeah.
But if you consider the fact that a 60-year-old person might have 30 plus years of life left to spend with someone and to enjoy that, those golden years with someone, like they have every right to that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
So I was really excited to see those folks come in.
Yeah, me too.
And go through the process. I mean, it's also, the Synchrony process as it is right now, we're going to continue to make it easier and easier. But it caters to folks who are really familiar with online technologies right now. And so that's not always comfortable for people who haven't spent the majority of their lives online.
Yeah,
exactly. And so I give these people a lot of kudos, who are sort of not digital natives like some of the younger demographics were, but who were willing to go the extra mile to give me their information and work through the scheduling process and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Let's talk about the men.
Yeah. And remember, guys, this is a much smaller pool. So, we're talking about...
What did you say, 54?
53 or 4, I think.
Yeah.
So we saw a similar breakdown in that, the majority of folks that we brought in were in their 20s and 30s. But a slightly higher percentage in the younger groups of men. So almost 35% of men were in the 21 to 29 age range. And then a quarter of men, 24.5%, were in the 30 to 35 age range.
Yeah, so we're looking at, what is that, like 60?
Almost 60%.
Yeah, 60%.
Yeah. That were, well, I mean, 58%, 59, I guess, if you round up, that were in that, between the ages of 21 and 35. So it skews younger for the men.
Right now, at least.
Right. Honestly shocked me.
Yeah.
Because I was not expecting young guys to want to try this as their first pass at serious dating.
Yeah. Well, not their first pass.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
I guess we will talk about the stats.
Yeah, for many people it was. And what I have learned from the guys that I've spoken to is that a lot of them were just like, they see the dating culture and how problematic it is, and they want nothing to do with it. And good on them. Anyway, so a slightly younger skew there. We did see 14.3% of men in that 36 to 40 age range, 20.4% in the 41 to 55
Which
age
is a
range.
decent chunk.
Yeah, it's a good chunk there. And then 6% in the 56 plus range.
Yeah.
So
what's the highest age that we have so far for men?
Oh, that's a good question. I think
we
have
said 70s, right?
Yeah, I think I have someone in his early 70s. I think he's got a consultation scheduled soon, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah. But yeah, so that's kind of the age breakdown. The takeaway is, younger men were coming in a little bit earlier than we expected, and our largest demographic by far, just in raw numbers, was women in their late 20s to mid 30s.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just kind of a neat place to see that happen.
It is. Let's talk about relationship history.
Yeah, this was interesting.
Yes.
So
this honestly blew my mind.
Right. So what we're talking about here is whether someone has a history of prior marriage or prior serious relationship. In the survey, we give people the option to say whether they've never dated, if they've dated but haven't had a serious relationship that led to engagement or marriage. We ask them if they've been engaged but not married before, if they've been married and divorced, married and widowed, or not married but in a long-term relationship that resulted in children. So a lot of different categories. And I've combined some of those just for the purposes of discussing this, but we'll start with the men. We found that around 40% of the men who responded were previously married. So that could be either that they were married and divorced or that they had been widowed during their marriage. 38.8% to be specific. Yeah, and then 61.2% of men were never married. So we saw a majority of folks who had not been married. And honestly, I think I was expecting more involvement early from folks who had maybe gone through a divorce and, were interested in finding someone again. So that was really interesting. But here's the kicker for men. 26.5% of men who responded to the survey have never dated.
Yep.
At all. And if you include
dated seriously.
No, dated at all. If you include the 14.3% that said they had dated but were not in a serious relationship, that means that there are 40% of the men who responded have never been in a serious relationship of any kind.
Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy to say that hasn't been something that's been part of their life. Like when you think about how much of our culture is devoted, our American culture is devoted to love and dating and romance, and 40% of the men who are coming to this have never experienced that at all.
But we have to consider that 50% of our demographics are men under the age of 35.
Sure.
So don't get me wrong, that's still a shocking statistic, but taking into consideration over half of our men are.
Yeah,
in
but
that
I
younger
think
age
it would be
group.
safe to say that our society expects men to be dating before then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, our teen dramas, our tween dramas, our Disney Channel movies have relationships in them.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, that was just really striking to me. With women, it's kind of a similar breakdown, slightly different. So we saw 41% of the women who responded were married previously, so slightly higher than the percentage of men who were previously married. And I think that could correspond to the age breakdown of our women's group having a larger diversity in those higher age groups. Which means that we had about 59% who had not been married before. And within that group, we had around 31% of women who never dated or dated seriously. There's a difference here between our men, though, where the majority of women in that 30% had dated. There were only 10% who said they had never dated at all.
Yeah.
So most of these women had had some dating experience of some kind, but never a serious relationship, which was interesting. And then we had 20% who had been in a serious relationship but never married, compared to 14% of men who had been in a serious relationship that didn't lead to marriage. So a lot of similarities, some slight differences that I think could have to do with the age breakdown across our demographics. But yeah, just really fascinating that the high percentage of people who have not had a relationship, a dating relationship of any kind, or one that they thought could have progressed to marriage.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about parenting.
Yeah, this is really important because I think, people who find themselves in singlehood again after being in a relationship and there's children involved, then your dating experience is totally different.
Oh, yeah. Very different.
You're looking for a partner to help you parent your child, even if you're not looking for, I don't think anyone is looking for a replacement parent.
No.
But this person who you're marrying is going to be really involved in the lives of your children.
You want them to be passionate about being a parent.
Right.
Like, you don't want them to, have a melancholy attitude towards parenting.
Right. And some of the folks that responded that they do have children are older people with grown children too, who, their children are adults. So that might not be them looking for an active co-parent necessarily. But yeah, so we saw that of the men who responded, 69% did not have any children. So 69% without children and 31% with children. For the women who responded, slightly more parents among our female population. So 59% with no children compared to 41% with children.
Yeah.
So again, I think that could have to do with the age ranges of the women that we were speaking with. I think it could be that, women, if they had a relationship that resulted in children, are more likely to be the ones actively parenting those children.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really interesting to see. But the majority of folks in both demographics were not parents. And were looking, some of them were looking to build families for the first time with a potential dating partner. So that was kind of interesting.
Yep. What are the numbers we have on their occupations?
Yeah, this was kind of cool. So it would have been because there's so much detail in what people do, I asked people to give me their job title.
Yeah.
And so, they run the gamut, right?
Oh, sure.
So it would be hard for me to crunch numbers into exactly what they did, but I did sort the job titles into different industries and kind of just see what the most frequently mentioned industries were. So for men, the top ones were education, and that includes both men who are educators and men who are full-time students.
Yeah.
So people that are involved in education, as well as technology. So things like software or IT or, working with any kind of computer technology, any kind of analysis work would go into that. So we saw a lot of folks there in those industries. For women, the top career path by far was healthcare. A lot of women who were nurses, or medical caregivers of some kind, technicians, a ton of healthcare related jobs, and also education jobs were really high as well. Again, that's both teachers and students, although I think this is just me recalling from memory, I think we have more women who are teachers than we do women who are still in school or still, acting as students. And then the next top career path for the women that we talked to was some kind of management or administration. So people working kind of like white collar office jobs in various sectors, but doing the management or administrative work in those spaces.
That's cool. So I'm excited to talk about their income.
Yeah.
Because the stats here were remarkable how similar they were between the men and women.
Yeah, this was weird almost.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I had a clear expectation of where this was going to go, but I didn't expect it to be this close. So again, I asked for ranges. So I in the survey, I allowed people to select a salary range. And like men and women were almost neck and neck in terms
within
of
like a percentage or a half a percentage between each group.
Yeah. So for each salary range, almost the same percentage of men and the same percentage of women occurred in each range bracket, shall we say. So folks who were making between $0 and $30,000, and often these were people who are either full-time students or retirees that aren't bringing in a lot of income. They're kind of living off of what they've built in their lives. That was 23% of men and 23% of women.
Yeah.
Pretty much on the nose. Crazy. Making between $31,000 and $50,000 a year. This is annual salary. 35% of men and 35% of women. That was our biggest category for both groups.
Okay.
The most earners are falling into that 31 to 50,000 range. Making between 51,000 and 75,000, 27% of men and 28% of responding women are in that range.
1% difference.
Yeah, 1 percentage point. Nothing too crazy there. And then going up to the next tier, people making between 76 and 100,000. This was a little bit close. Men slightly above women here. So 10% of the men who responded are in this range compared to 9.5% of women. But I mean, like, it's just so weird how close they are.
Yeah.
And then making over
even in like the higher categories are still close.
Yeah, and in the next tier up is people earning between $101,000 to $150,000 a year. So there were 4% of men who responded in that category and 3.6% of women.
Yeah.
One difference is that we only had 2 earners in the whole like community of people who responded that were making more than $151,000 annually, and both of them are female. So congratulations to these boss babes who are just doing amazing work out there. But
difference between these is remarkable. I don't know why I was expecting a bigger discrepancy.
Yeah, I think I was too. And I didn't really have a vision for what that looked like. But again, the community of respondents is not necessarily representative of our whole Apostolic Singles community.
No, this is just our 278 people that have responded to us.
But it was eerie how close the men and women are in terms of the income breakdown. And that corresponds to education. You know, that's a big influence in a lot of people's lives. It's something that comes up a lot when we talk about people's values. So it was interesting to hear and kind of look at the numbers of how people's education was playing into that.
Speaking of education.
Yeah. I'm not going to belabor all the different categories with education because it can get really, really tedious. Detailed. Yeah. So let's just talk a little bit about the percentage of folks who have a level of higher education, meaning that they've gone to college or done something past high school. We have around 8% of men and 11% of women that have done some college or are currently enrolled in college but haven't attained a degree. 6% of men and 10% of women who completed a 2-year degree. So that's like an associate's degree typically. And then in terms of 4-year degrees, like bachelor's degrees, I broke this down into secular versus Bible college degrees because, a lot of folks who attend Bible college are getting degrees, but they wouldn't necessarily map to a secular school, and that might lead them in different professional directions. So 23% of responding men had 4-year college degrees compared to 18% of women. 8% of men had secular graduate degrees compared to 18% of women. So we definitely saw more women with advanced degrees. So this is like a master's degree, or even we have a couple of folks who have the equivalent of a doctorate degree or some kind of post-master's coursework.
Whether it be PhD, MD.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really cool to see. Not a ton of respondents with Bible college degrees. So
that's actually what's surprising to me.
Yeah, Bible colleges. Y'all gotta come into the
Step up your
pipeline.
game.
Huh?
So step up your game. Join Synchrony.
Or the people at Bible college. Fine. This is
that's true.
This is a stereotype.
Or you're having an easier time finding people at Bible college.
Bible colleges don't need matchmaking because they find their spouse at Bible college.
Touche.
That's a stereotype that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. But yeah. So
you go to Bible college to find Jesus and a spouse.
That's the trope. So 2% of men who responded had Bible college degrees compared to 1% of women. And then we saw a lot of folks that had some kind of trade license or certification. So this is stuff like anything from, being a mechanic or a plumber or an electrician to being a chef, right? Or maybe, like an LPN, right? Or something that doesn't have a complete degree path associated with it. So men, 10% of men fell into that category compared to 11% of women. So those are the numbers that we crunched for this, which just...
Sorry for all the people who do not like numbers. You're probably not listening anymore. But this just is fascinating for us specifically. And we know that there's a few people out there that want to hear this stuff.
Yeah.
This is so cool to see.
It really is. And I think it just speaks to the diversity of this community, right? Like, we're not talking about just one type of person that's looking for a partner and that needs a different way to find them. It applies to everyone in our apostolic community. We didn't even talk about race here, but we also saw people from all different kinds of racial and ethnic backgrounds, different types of communities. I mean, this is happening everywhere to everyone. And I think that's really important to call out.
We've been talking to this point about anyone who's responded to this survey. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the people you've actually had one-on-one, 1-hour interviews with.
Yeah.
You've had 115.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's been amazing. I mean, just to sit with these people and share their stories and get to know them for that hour.
That's a big sample size.
It's definitely more than my master's thesis. I can tell you that right now.
For those in research, 115, not variables, but 115 people in a sample is actually a pretty decent quantity.
For something like sociology research or anthropology, the kind of interviewing that we did, I mean, this is a significant amount of time spent with people. So again, we're going to see the same disparity between men and women, slightly larger actually. So, because in order for people to get to the interview, they had to get my email after they submitted their survey, book a consultation with me, and then show up to the consultation. And full disclosure, we're still working on our scheduling and booking stuff. So it wasn't the smoothest process for everyone. And so we definitely saw some drop off here. So again, we had 278 surveys, only 115 interviews. Of that, 21 of those interviews were from men and 94 were from women. So,
and you have some still scheduled, but this is at this point.
Right. We still have some that are in the process of being held, but
you only have so much time in your day, which is why we're trying to add a payment element to this, so that way it could be taken more seriously on our end. And not that we haven't been taking it seriously, it's just stretching ourselves then between parenting and work and also this passion project of ours.
Yeah. So the interviews are really cool because we take an hour and I try to go really deep with each of these people about what their values are. And I have some questions that guide that conversation about what it is that they're looking for, the kinds of relationships that inspire them, the things that are important to them in their friendships. Because I think what's important to you in friendship is really important to you in your relationship with your spouse.
It's true.
We also talk about physical preferences. We talk about logistics, how comfortable they are with dating someone who lives far away, or, where they could live after they get married. So all of that informs kind of the picture that we put together for who is a good fit for that person.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about some themes, but you should go into this with the understanding that what I'm about to say is skewed slightly toward women, because again, we just had more time with women talking about these things than we did with men.
What do you hear most from these interviews? Like, what are some of the biggest topics that come up?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I think show up in almost every conversation I have with people. And one of them is that there is really not a good space for singles to meet each other right now. And this was the heart of the project, right? Why we thought it was valuable. But a lot of the folks that I talk to, will say that they're maybe a little bit introverted. Not everybody, but, some struggle in those big social situations. There have been some folks that have disclosed to me that they're on the autism spectrum, which presents a lot of social challenges for some people, or that they have something like a social anxiety issue that just make it much more difficult for them to walk into a big crowd or a rally or youth congress and connect with someone. That's a difficult space for anyone.
Yeah.
But if you experience any kind of sort of emotional or, social challenge, it's just about impossible to create connection there. So that comes up a lot. And then the other thing that I hear often is most people before they come here have tried some form of online dating.
Yeah.
Whether that's like dating sites like Christian Mingle or the Apostolic Singles Network, or just getting into the...
Everyone's connected.
No, that's dead, I'm pretty sure.
If you're a millennial and you were apostolic in the early 2000s, you will cringe at that name.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just having a flashback. But a lot of what we hear from people is that, the online spaces, even like the apostolic Facebook groups, aren't a place where people feel safe. And some of that's because they just really still feel like they can't always trust that people are authentic in those spaces.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of reports, and this is concerning to me, frankly, about people being sexually propositioned in quote unquote apostolic spaces like the Facebook groups, which is really hard because the people that are the admins of those groups have a limited amount of control over...
Well, and the admins don't see what's in their DMs.
Right. And the admins can't...
if someone's not reporting it, then it's just going unnoticed.
Yeah. And the admins can't know everything about someone based on their Facebook profile, right?
Yeah.
So...
well, and let's be honest, just because you're in church doesn't mean all of your sinful tendencies have been worked on between your relationship with God.
Yeah.
So, like, at the end of the day, they're still people.
Right.
But that being said, that doesn't condone a safe environment for people all the times. And we're not saying every Facebook group is like this, but people are people.
Yeah. And it's a pretty universal experience that if they've tried online dating of some flavor, they've been frustrated by it.
Yeah.
And just have found that it's not sufficient to give them space to connect.
Yeah.
So those are the things that come up all the time. I think some other themes have to do with what people want to get out of their dating relationships. And this is really beautiful to me because it's a common human experience. And I think it shows that at the end of the day, a lot of us really want the same things.
Yeah.
The dating landscape is complicated and hard, but what we're looking to get out of them is in a lot of cases the same. I think something that comes up almost in every conversation is that people are really hungry to be completely transparent with someone.
Yeah.
And to be known and seen for who they are. People describe, not having to be anything they don't want to be, or being able to take off the mask that they have to wear during the day and just get to sit with their person and, be themselves.
Yeah.
I think loneliness really prevents you from feeling like you're sharing your whole self. So people are really hungry for that.
Yeah, and I get it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I part of my conversations with them is asking like, what are the important parts of your life that you want to share with someone. And the things that come up most often are that people, I guess, sort of two flavors, like people want to share their periods of rest.
Yeah.
You know, after they have finished their day, they want to sit in the quiet with someone else, or they want to start their day with someone else peacefully. Those kinds of small, restful moments, people are looking for a companionship there. And they're also looking for people to share novelty. So I hear a lot of like, I really want to travel, or I really want to go try new food, or experience new places, or just drive to a different part of town on a whim and check out the scene there. And they don't want to do that by themselves.
Oh, of course not.
Right. So that comes up a lot. And then I think there are some things that tend to show up specifically for women and specifically for men. And I do want to spend some time here because, you know, if you're looking to date someone, listen up, because this is what the other group is looking for someone to provide to them. For women, something that comes up all the time is that they really want to be allowed the space to be vulnerable and feminine and gentle. And again, a lot of the women that I'm speaking to are either in periods of extended singleness, where maybe they are in their 30s or 40s, or they've been married and went through a divorce. I talk to a lot of women who are single parents. They are shouldering the entire burden of their life.
Yeah.
You know, they're managing their finances and their home and their children sometimes, and the ministries that they run at church, even women who have never been married, who don't have children.
Yeah.
You know, think about your church right now and who is doing the legwork for a lot of different behind the scenes ministries. A lot of times it's single people, and it's often single women. We can break this down in a different episode, but I think women are trained from a very young age to kind of take charge of the logistics of things. I think that's something that we're sort of coached to do in just American culture. And so women really want someone to come into their lives and not take away their independence, but shoulder some of the responsibility.
Yeah.
And work beside them and kind of just, you know, have a co-laborer, have a partner in what they do. Do you have thoughts on that?
I have thoughts more on single people in ministry in general.
Yeah.
Because what I've seen is, and even myself being over our visual media department, I've had the thought run through my mind, the people who are single have more time availability.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
that's
easier.
The perception, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's the perception, at least. You know, I find myself tempted to think that. And so and it might be true, but you know, when you have kids and you're running a job and you have like marriage responsibilities to take care of, like it's when it comes to ministry, there's a temptation to say, hey, this person that's in this ministry might have more time to do stuff. So let me ask them to do more stuff.
Yeah.
But really, that's, you know, and I'm not saying you shouldn't ask them to do stuff, but I'm saying it's also, if it's not monitored, you might get burnout by that single person because they're getting asked by 7 different departments to do stuff, because everyone has that perception of, oh, they got free time. They don't have kids.
Yeah.
They don't have a wife, you know?
A lot of the people who I talk to say, I ask them, you know, what they do in church, and they're like, I do everything.
Yeah.
I do anything that anyone needs me to do because I'm there and I'm willing.
Yeah. And also it like takes away for more opportunities for you to spend time on yourself to find someone.
Right. If you're running every conference and rally or every social event, you don't have that. So women specifically cite that as something they really want.
Yeah.
You know, someone to come in with and help with. Men, again, we have fewer men that I've done this with, so I don't have as much of a sample size, but some themes that I see is men are really looking for someone who will support them emotionally.
Yeah.
And help them to celebrate their achievements and reach for their goals. You know, I think in our culture, we put a massive amount of pressure on men to achieve certain milestones.
Yeah.
And some men really thrive in that environment and some really don't. But either way, they're looking for a woman who will stand beside them and say, you're absolutely capable of doing that, and I support you in doing that. And when you have a win, I'm going to be excited about it with you.
Yeah. That's huge. And that's, I mean, I just thinking about it from my marriage perspective, like that's exactly what I long for from Megan. You know, like I love that part of our marriage.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation of age and differences of expectations?
Yes. Yes. Overwhelmingly so. At a high level, people's lists about what they want in their partner get much shorter and more, frankly, more values driven and biblical as they get older. And I think some of that is just wisdom that comes with learning more about the world, and recognizing what's really important to you as you go through life. But when I say list, I mean, like, I've met people have given me actual lists of what they want. Long list, which is okay. I accept
you did
that.
the same thing for me.
Yeah, I did. I made lists. I think it's valuable as an exercise, to go through and kind of pick what you want. But, you know, when I'm talking to someone in their 60s and I'm asking them what they want and they say, like, I just want to share my life with someone and I want them to love God, and what they look like doesn't matter as much to me anymore. And that's really beautiful to see that evolution kind of happen. But I think it's safe to say physical preferences, what someone looks like, is much more important to younger people.
Yeah.
And specifically more important to men. And we can get into that in another episode about gender and how it informs how much emphasis we put on the physical attractiveness of someone. Because I think we're battling some stereotypes there that aren't helping us have a healthy dating culture.
Yeah.
But what someone looks like is much more important to people at the beginning of their dating space, just from what we can tell so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's how we've been programmed.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And so women of any age tend to be more open to dating people of varied body types. Everyone has their preferences.
Sure.
But body type specificity, you know, definitely is more something that I see from men, of having a more concentrated idea of what their physical preferences are. And I'm just going to put it out there. There's a preference for thinness that I think is probably damaging to our culture. We'll have to unpack that more later, but that comes up a lot.
That's a lot bigger topic than what we can do for this episode.
Yeah, it's big. So we'll unpack that some more. But anyway, so I think that happens. And then most people who want children, this was an interesting thing to me. You know, people who want to have kids, the majority of them are open to dating and marrying someone who already has some. So I ask people about their comfort level with becoming a step parent. And generally speaking, if they're a person who wants to have children, they're open to starting off their relationship by becoming a co-parent with someone who already has children. And that's really cool to me.
That is really cool.
Yeah. Some people are actually really excited about that prospect. You know, women who are no longer feeling confident in their ability to have biological children due to age or medical concerns or something like that are jumping at the opportunity to meet someone with children that they could help parent, which I think is really special.
It really is.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I think when we created Synchrony, that was a thought in the back of our mind about the people with children who are single due to, you know, death or divorce. But I don't think we realized how big of an impact that really could have on them. Now that we see the stats of it, like, and how many people there are, we realize that it's a really cool opportunity for those people to be able to focus on their children and family and have someone helping them look for them. And I'm sure they're looking on their own as well, but like, it's just like having an extra set of hands to help.
Yeah. I mean, going back to that stat, you know, 40% of the women who responded to this survey, you know, almost 200 women have children, and that's 200 families that need a father involved.
Yeah.
Like, just think about that way. 200 opportunities for someone to come and partner with someone in parenting. Almost 200.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. that's pretty much all the stats and themes that we wanted to crunch. I'm sorry this is so long, guys. There's just so much here, and we could probably do like 5 episodes on all this, but we just wanted to try to give you the highlights.
We need you guys to bear with us because we're new to podcasting, and so our time approximation isn't really on how long a podcast is, and according to content that we have.
We're like, we can do this in half an hour. It'll be fine.
Yeah. I have one more question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Who do we need more of in this project to create great matches?
Yeah. I mean, first, obviously, we need more men. So tell your male friends, men I've found often gain confidence from seeing other men try something and getting a recommendation from a male who they trust. So if you're a dude listening to this, share this with your male friends.
And if you're a woman, listen to this, which is most of our statistics right now for podcasting. Tell your single friends.
Tell your brothers-in-law.
Tell your parents.
Tell your siblings.
Tell your single friends' parents.
Tell your single friends, your single guy friend's mom. Get them on this.
Yes.
No.
Because the more men we have in this, the more matches we'll be able to start.
Yeah,
working with.
Men coming into the pipeline is really what dictates the speed of how quickly I can match somebody. So, we especially, and this is really important. We especially need to see some involvement from men of color. We have people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds who want to create families within a community that they're comfortable with and familiar. That's important to them. It's important for them to raise children with a certain type of cultural experience. We really need men who come from diverse ethnic backgrounds, specifically Black men or Latino men. I think we're really lacking in those demographics, and there are a lot of opportunity of people who want to create families within those communities. But I think we're also coming up against some real challenges, which is that we need people to think harder and more critically about how important physical attractiveness is to them at the start of a conversation. We're very much living in Tinder culture.
Yeah. Swipe left, swipe right.
Right. Base everything off of someone's appearance or like a Facebook thumbnail photo.
Yeah.
So we need people to get out of that mindset a little bit. And that would dramatically change people's level of success with meeting someone new.
Yeah.
Because think about it, like you and I went to church together for almost 4 years, and bless your heart, I didn't look twice at you. And you're cute, but like...
Well, you even said you had to wait for my jawline to grow.
I did. I had to wait for Steven to get a jawline. No, it just... we weren't immediately physically attracted to each other.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't. It doesn't mean that we don't find each other really physically attractive now. But so I want people to start to loosen up their mindset of how big of a role that has to play at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also it's going to help as we get better and better at going through the matching and the scheduling process, and all of that can just take a while. We're working through it, and sometimes people get antsy and kind of decide that it's not worth the time, but we're hoping that it's actually going to save them time that they would otherwise spend in long running situationships. So I think if people can give us grace on that, it'll help us create more opportunities for them to talk to people.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up, a couple of just quick reminders. You can pre-register for the launch. If this is specifically for people who are new to the project, you haven't done a consultation yet, go to synchronyproject.com and click the button to pre-register, and that will give you access to that $100 off your matchmaking experience. It's a big deal, the biggest discount we're ever going to offer. So please take advantage of that now and share with people who you think might benefit from it. Yeah, what else do we want to remind them?
Well, if you have any questions that you want to submit
or topics
for the podcast, send it to
questions@synchronyproject.com.
Hey, I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you for doing this with me.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to me rant about stats for a really long time.
My pleasure.
All right, guys. See you next time.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.